Very good. Here we are, back. We're going to move a little bit the needle and look at one sector in particular, health and health security. But in fact, it has come up already in the opening panel. So health is definitely part of this defense and security discussion, but we'll find out more. So why health security? Well, I guess this discussion links back very naturally to the aftermath of COVID, but also the need for Europe to urgently address the medicine shortages and the need to have resilient and secure supply chains when it comes to medical needs. So we're going to place the needle actually right at the crossroad between the EU defense and security agenda and the EU competitiveness and industrial agenda, and see in that point whether there is an opportunity actually trying to spin the discussion a bit more positively to turn this convergence of agenda into a driver for innovation for the health sector. This session is organized in partnership with Novartis, and we're very grateful actually that you brought this topic onto the program. We have a distinguished panel to discuss these important questions. I'm going to introduce the speakers from left to right. So we've got Wolfgang Philipp. Most of you know him. He's been around and is the face, one of the faces of DG HERA in Brussels. You are Principal Advisor and Chief Science Officer at DG HERA European Commission. Next to you, Yannick Morel, Project Director for Stockpiling Strategy at the Directorate General of Health, Ministry of Health, French government. Next to you, Lukasz Pronitsky, Head of the Sponsor Support Center, right? Medical Research Agency, Government of Poland. Stine Bosse, Member of the European Parliament. And finally, Michele Mastrinaro, Global Head of Policy and Growth at Novartis. Thank you for joining us. I'll go straight on. Why? Why do we need to talk about health security? Maybe Michele, you can start because you're behind that. So why does it matter to address the health part of this broader discussion around defense and security R&D?
Thank you.
Go on.
So I probably will start with the fact that I didn't think that I will ever have to address this question after COVID, but we forget quickly. So I think that everyone has learned over the past 4 or 5 years what happens when health is not an integral part of our thinking around the security of citizens of any sovereign nation, really. So I think that we have lived through that experience within our very immediate memory. And this is not something that is entirely new. So if you think of how NATO is structured, for example, we always refer to Article 5 in terms of mutual defense. We are a lot closer to Article 3 around resilience, where healthcare has been and continues to be one of the pillars that receives that investment and that continues to be a focus on that. So we believe that it's self-evident that for any country that takes responsibility for the health and safety of their citizens, healthcare has to be one of the elements. And that is the angle that we take when we engage in this conversation.
All right. Stine, where did you accept to be here today?
First of all, I really thank you and also Novartis for bringing on the subject with a clear security angle. And I think, as you say, we just have to take ourselves back to the COVID situation. Did anybody feel that was secure and that we knew exactly what to do and where to get stuff and where to produce it and all this? No, we were in dire straits. And to add to that, we only succeeded because we worked together. For me, this is extremely important to notice. It was only because the European Union actually decided that this cannot be solved country by country. We have to work together. And then we have to remember in this whole discussion, and I think this is, for me, very crucial. First of all, we cannot talk about health and security without talking about medicines and medicine devices. Then we can talk about, how we live, what we eat, and we don't smoke and all this. But if we want to talk about the situations where we really are on the spot, we need to talk about these areas. And then, of course, we need to talk about how do we encourage the industry? How do we make sure that we actually are in the front of all this? And I guess we will come back to that, but this is also about competition. This is also about where we stand globally, that we will never again face a situation where we lack. And that is, for me, security for the citizens. And then just finally, I heard only, I think 2 weeks after I arrived here in Brussels, I heard leaders in Politico saying, well, health is not really a subject anymore. We don't need to worry about that. COVID is done. And this is, for me, disrespectful to the citizens of Europe, because health is a big issue. And just to say, alongside with the fact that we need clear and strong industries, we also need access to medicines as being top of our agenda. So for me, this is perhaps exactly what I want to work with.
Very good. Lucas, we have, we often say that we have a war on Europe's doorstep. Poland is at the front line, right? So how is research security, or how high research security is on the Polish agenda?
First, thank you for inviting me for this event. If you ask a question about importance of health in the security, and how important is to develop and provide medicines to EU citizens, I think the answer is quite simple. If we move back in time, the health crises are returning every few years. Chernobyl catastrophe, bird flu, swine flu, COVID. We are still in the aftermath of COVID. Therefore, we need to be prepared for upcoming crises. We don't know what will be, which it will be. Will be the radiologic danger, or it will be another biological danger. Therefore, we need to invest in our research and development facilities, support industry, to build preparedness for the upcoming. Therefore, I think that's why it's important. That's why health is important in the security and defense of our nations and EU, or I might say even it's a global matter.
Very good. And in fact, we see already that we are dancing a little bit between different notions, a pandemic, but also a war or a biological threat. So I think it's a good time to just explain a little bit what is it we're talking about here. And Yannick, you did that very well when you educated me about this subject on during our preparatory call. Do you want to just explain a little bit what are these different products we're talking about? And then I'll turn to you, Wolfgang.
Yes, thanks. Well, we are talking about health security, and it has some common features with military security, defense and security. Because a health crisis can happen both from a natural cause, like COVID, but it can also be generated by a man-made will, such as cyber threats or attacks, or indirect health crisis generated by war actions. And then we have to be prepared against this sanitary crisis. And it's quite different from another big issue and problem you mentioned, for example, the shortage of medicines in everyday life. And I think we can have in mind that we need some very specific countermeasures for very specific risks. I call it the insurance. In case of a cyber attack or a next pandemic, none of us know when it will happen and how it will look like exactly. And we need to have addressed this question, developing countermeasures for that, which is insurance countermeasures. Maybe you will develop them, you will stockpile them, but you will not use them. And these I can call them niche products because they are not used in everyday life. For example, we can develop vaccines, antidotes, etc. for viruses for which we don't have currently problems, and we may never have problems. But if we don't have them, we will be in a big trouble, like for the COVID. And for this, we have a kind of market failure. In everyday life, we don't have a market for that, and of course, industry is not always interested by these products. So we have to address this problem of niche products, and then we will come back later. I think we need specific tools, because using the classical tools for R&D and industry support is not well adapted for these very specific items. It can be medicines, it can be medical devices, it can be PPEs, protection equipment, detection equipment, etc. So it can cover a wide range of different technologies. The common point is that we don't have a strong market, and we need to prepare in advance. It's rather like the defense sector. Well, it depends what country, but in case a country is not at war, they still develop and stockpile ammunition, etc., even though they don't use it every day because they are not in a war situation. So we have to do it for the same for a sanitary crisis. We have to develop and stockpile items to be used in case the problems happen in the future.
HERA came up because of COVID, right? So we rushed into, the Commission rushed into setting up something that would help at the European level and address future pandemics. So what's the mandate of HERA? Can you just help us delineate it in light of what we just heard in terms of different products?
So let me first say HERA did not just come up because of COVID. HERA came up because we missed a lot of opportunities of all that Lucas said already, all of these health crises that we saw over the past 20 years, with a lot of recommendations and lessons learned and groups sitting together. At the end of the day, we saw then in the very first 4 weeks or so, after it was clear that something is developing there, still observing things in slow motion, that we were not prepared in terms of availability and access to medical countermeasures. And that includes simple stuff like gloves, like masks, like physical barriers, up to vaccines. We were, perhaps I can say this, I think I personally believe that we were on the lucky side, that research investments over the past 20, 30 years when it comes to vaccine development were just moving in one right direction, although nobody really believed in that 10 years ago, apart from some specialists and some clever investors. So HERA was then set up as a direct consequence out of the lessons learned of the first couple of months in the pandemic. Commission President announced this already in September 2020, so during the pandemic, before vaccines were there, that Europe should would set up something like a BARDA-like structure, it was called at the time. And we thought we would set up something that goes a bit further than what BARDA is doing. Starting with, and I come to the mandate just to explain this. I hope it's not going to be too boring to many of the people here in the room. So it really starts with, on the left side is an end-to-end approach. On the left side with a proper threat assessment. No? So our own IT platforms to dissect and assess information that is available from different origins. The next step would be a proper intelligence. We also have a biological intelligence element already in place, a European laboratory network with top-notch laboratories that really provide us biological intelligence. It goes to investments into research and development of medical countermeasures, vaccines, drugs, in particular antivirals is in the focus here, but also antibiotics, diagnostics of all kinds, and smart materials, etc., etc. We have already put more than €1 billion into that. obviously through the existing programs, the research program and the health program. Then we are supporting manufacturing capacities, reserving capacities, paying about 160 million just for the reservation of manufacturing capacities for vaccines, for different technologies. That is also a lesson learned, having a lot of autonomy here on that side, making sure that manufacturing capacities are available in Europe. It goes further with procurement, which are organized with member states, among member states, for all kind of things, drugs, vaccines, and so on and so forth. And then it continues with critical medicines. We'll come to that certainly later, but also to the deployment, to the stockpiling that Yannick mentioned. Here, the Commission has invested 1.2 billion already into several stockpiles of a lot of compounds which serve as a strategic reserve. That's a very important remark, I would say. And then to the deployment, because I mean, having something somewhere in a warehouse or in a reservation contract with the company doesn't mean it really reaches the place where it should go. So all of this needs a lot of detailed and expert work to make sure that things that can be arranged before event X happens is in place.
Just one question for Wolfgang, then I come to you. The procurement question. So does HERA already deploy some joint procurement at the scale of the EU, like shared procurement by all the states?
Yes.
It's happening?
It's happening. For vaccines, for example, for antibiotics, it's happening. But as you know, it's all happening under the framework of the joint procurement agreements, 36 countries. So it's not just the EU, but also nearly all members, all surrounding countries, many of them are candidate countries now, are participating to that, and it's their choice to participate in these joint procurements.
All right, good. Stina?
No, I just wanted to say for sort of facts reasons, I think you actually visited us in the Center Committee, and we were sort of deep diving into many of these issues, and I do think that it was very comforting to understand that the lessons learned from the institutional point of view were very clear, and that the new procedures were in place. I found it very depressing actually, following in the beginning of the pandemic, the calls for action out of the agency in Stockholm, and nobody reacted. And of course, you had to be a bit of a nerd to understand that. But I know that everybody tried, but there was not enough coordination and awareness. And this is now much better, and it's sort of put in place so that we can hopefully expect it to work in a completely different way.
If you allow me just to give my view on that point, nobody reacted. I mean, we posted, the Commission posted.
Yeah, but this is the point.
No, I'm not, but then I come to the coordination part. Sometimes I'm a bit long with in talking or exploring. So on the 9th of January, we posted a notification to member states. There's a specific system, an early warning and response system in place. On the 15th of January, we had the first meeting with all member states, and the very first question was, do you have enough PPE? So the answer is widely known. At the end of the day, reality caught up these answers basically, and we started very quickly in organizing sometimes daily meetings with member states to coordinate certain actions, to explore what kind of medical countermeasures would be available, to see if we can, or we launched joint procurements. Obviously, you cannot launch joint procurements for something that doesn't exist, like at the moment PPE, but nevertheless, we organized also Commission procurement of PPE, and so on and so forth. There was a lot of things going on, also in terms of coordination. The point is, if you have 27 member states sitting there, all of these countries have their national response plans and measures in place, plus a political level that sometimes reacts also at their gusto.
Yeah.
That makes it very difficult to come up with a common response. At the end of the day, on the vaccine side, that worked then out. On the joint procurement side, it worked out. And also on developing joint aspects around vaccination strategies, it worked out. It took a little bit of time, but it's it's complex. We don't have, we need to deal with 27 plus a couple of agencies, plus a political level that has the final say. So therefore, it's no excuse just to say it was very complex, but the reality, I mean, we all know about the reality.
But my criticism was towards the member states, not the Commission, because
Yeah.
you were there,
Yeah.
but people were.
And
Not right.
there were also a lot of member states, I must say, really active and really supportive. But if you want to coordinate, the question is, what do we wait for? For the last one to decide?
Yeah.
Or at one point you need to move on? So depending on the situation and the topic that is under discussion for coordination, you take different decisions.
Can we move on to research, actually, research and especially investment in research? This is a question for you all, but maybe Michele, you want to take that one first, because we heard about the shortages of medicine already, but for the industry and for the states, actually, for the member states, does it make sense to distinguish the short-term risks or the short-term needs and the medicines that citizens may need in the future? What drives the investment in R&D for Novartis?
That's a good question. There are three, and this is not just for Novartis, I would say for the life sciences industry in general. There are really three pillars that go into those decisions. The needs, first, you need to have a scientific understanding of the disease that we're trying to tackle. Then second, there needs to be the technical feasibility of actually addressing that disease. And finally, there needs to be a reasonable assurance that there will be a market for a medicine if we actually manage to come up with a medicine that works. So in many of these cases, even when the scientific understanding is there, and sometimes there is a technical feasibility being put forward, the assurance of having a degree of demand if a good medicine is developed is not necessarily there. And this is a place where different geographies have taken dramatically different angles in terms of how to tackle this challenge. Two that are very relevant to us are Europe on one side and the United States on the other. The US is a place where we have seen over and over again a tendency and a willingness to essentially provide a market at risk so that if the medicine is valuable, there will be a market, there will be reward, and things will work. That has been quite different from the recent development from a European perspective, where a lot of the focus has been around trying to get the same results for less, as opposed to try to maintain the investment or grow it to be more competitive and get more.
Okay. So how does that translate moving forward?
So if very practical examples, there are areas where we would, as an industry, again, develop medicines in a way that responds better to the needs of the places where there is a market for that innovation. That means, by definition, that the EU will, that in Europe more generally, will fall behind and has fallen behind already in terms of the influence that it has in what gets developed and what gets produced.
But you don't know yet what the market will be moving forward. If we talk about the research that needs to happen now for product that may come later on. So how do you distinguish those things that for which you know there's a market and the more fundamental science part?
Some of it, I would say, is quite evident pretty quickly. So just to give a very specific example, if you look at the general pharma legislation that is being debated, everything that goes in the direction of reducing regulatory data protection, so the time during which we have a market in Europe compared to somewhere else, is very clear and very evident right away that that goes in the direction of reducing the market and reducing the attractiveness of Europe and its competitiveness, almost regardless of the quality of the medicine that actually gets produced. So some of these policy interventions are very clear from the outset, I would say.
All right, and I've got two more questions. One, public-private collaboration. Does that work well? There is a reference to it in the ATO report that was there yesterday with some level of criticism, actually. And the fact that there needs to be a way for Europe to be able to attract more investment, private investment from industry into R&D. But there is a disconnect here in what you're saying. In some places, there is no market. That's what you said, Yannick. And if there is no market, where would you jump in? So how do you see this collaboration evolve? And does Novartis feel that there is enough incentive to jump into such collaborations?
I would probably tackle the two questions separately, and I suspect there might be different views in the panel on this particular point. So in terms of the partnership between the public and the private sector, I don't think that that's an aspiration as much as a reality in healthcare, particularly in Europe. Healthcare systems are fundamentally public in the overwhelming majority of the expenditure and the operations. Research is being done privately and publicly, development overwhelmingly being done privately. So it is really something that happens already, and we have good examples of it throughout. The incentives, on the other hand, I will say are different. And that is where I see a significant difference from geographies like the US that have taken a particular angle, as opposed to trying to get the same for less, which has been the take from Europe, I will say, over the past few years.
All right. Do you want to come in?
Yes, I wanted, because I think there are the two things here that we need probably to separate a little bit. I agree that we need clearly to have a healthy, strong pharmaceutical and medical technical devices industry. Yes. This comes, of course, with access to capital, with the framework, the rules that we imply, so that it doesn't become much more attractive to go to the US. This is the situation right now, and we'll have to face it. We have to talk about it and find solutions here. And I'm pretty much foregoing in this direction. That's why I'm also saying, on the other hand, we need that to go hand in hand with accessibility. And looking after any citizen in Europe should be able to access medicine. That also becomes a security issue. And then the third point being, if you look at, for example, the AMR, we don't need to look for the next pandemic. It's just building up. So if you look at this huge problem really facing all of us, and you look at the attractiveness to develop new penicillins, that's a problem, because the market is so small. This is the opposite of stockpiling, I guess. And here we need to think differently. Here we need to think, new models, some kind of de-risking, so that small, because they are often the more innovative SME types of businesses that want to go into this sector. And we need to support this. And perhaps even here challenge the industry a bit and say, you need to chip in. You need to be part of this also, even though the market is not perfect for you.
How is it on the French and Polish side? Do you feel like the industry is committed? Do you see what Yannick, what you said? If there is no market, how do you get the attention of big pharma groups or even SMEs?
Okay.
Well, you brought it up, Yannick.
Yeah. Well, I think first comment. We are speaking about security, defense. Maybe you know that in the Fundamental Treaty of the Union, Article 346 mentions essential security interests, which brings states to be able to do something special, etc. And in these interests, there are ammunitions, etc., but there is no lines for medicines, health, etc. And we can all agree now that health is a kind of matter that also bears a kind of security aspect. We have to be prepared for the next pandemic, for the next maybe cyber attacks or something like that. And I think for that we need a specific set of tools to implement industry supports and R&D. Because currently we have tools which were developed for medicines for which we have a market. So there are some complications and difficulties, you mentioned, shortages, etc. But in case you don't have a regular market, it's a problem, because even if the EU or member states pay for the basic research and you have no market, the industry is not interested. And so we have to create the kind of market, and in this case it's very special because the only buyer are public bodies. It can be the Commission, it can be member states, but it's not the everyday life market in hospitals. It's different. And so it's, for example, very interesting that the Commission has this joint procurement agreement process, because we can gather different needs, and then maybe the industry will be, oh, it's interesting enough. If every member state just buys a few stuff, niche products, in very small quantities and in every 3 years, it's not enough to develop a strong industry. And also there is the problem of production sovereignty. In a globalized market, the production of medicines can be anywhere, and the basic products, active pharmaceutical ingredients, they can be from China, from etc. So there is also this question of making sure that we have something here controlled by the union, and in case we need it, we have it, because we all know that in case we have a crisis, you don't have friends anymore.
So that's stockpiling.
It may be stockpiling. It's not only stockpiling. You cannot stockpile everything because it's too costly. We have other tools, and Wolfgang mentioned, for example, reservation of production capacity. So you pay, it's kind of insurance to make sure that some industry will be here in case we need it. And for EU Fab, you mentioned for the vaccines, it's plants within Europe. And I'm sure you make sure that in case we have the next pandemic, they will be ready for us. And since the Commission has paid, we will be first in line to get the vaccines. And so it's a whole policy, but I think we must progress and develop specific tools for these niche products or market failures. Because if we want to apply just classical tools, which were developed a long time ago, it's not working very well. And our industry colleague can, I'm sure, confirm that.
Stina, Lucas?
I
Stina
just
first?
want one comment on this common procurement. I definitely see that is a tool, and definitely in sort of acute situations where security is sort of at stake here and now. But I do still have a little bit of a question mark if we talk about sort of an ongoing situation regarding common procurement. Merely from the fact that as it is now, we'll have to say to the industry, you know, there's something with the pricing that is probably doesn't cater for the accessibility. But if you took the average and said, now we buy everything together and we take the average price, then it would be probably cheaper in Denmark, where I stem from, and it would be more expensive in Romania. And that's not where we want to go. So and that's where you separate. I get that point. I just wanted to make that that there are two different situations here.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the acute situation. And
Yes,
there I totally agree.
exactly. And also the joint procurement agreement, they are based on a regulation by the EU, which was placed in 2022, I think, which mentions sanitary crisis. So it's not every day and every medicines. It's specific items,
Sure.
what I call niche. And for this, of course, it's interesting to have joint procurement, but of course, it's not for paracetamol, amoxicillin, and everyday life, because it would disrupt
Yes.
the markets and maybe disrupt the health systems in some member states. Or at least there must be a lot of discussions between the Commission and member states to achieve joint procurement for everyday life medicines. My point was just focusing on the insurance aspect, the security, the health security for the next problems, next pandemics, attacks, or something.
Okay, Lucas.
I think I agree with my...
And then I will open for questions. Okay? Okay,
I
sorry.
must agree with both of my previous speakers. Stockpiling can prepare us for what we know, what we can know, what we can think about it. But we also need to build readiness to develop tools, to develop new medicines or medical devices that are needed in case of a crisis or any other acute situations. Currently in Poland, we are trying to finance, we are financing the R&D projects from national funds and from RRF.
The Resilience and Recovery
Yes,
Facility.
yes. And these projects are mostly on looking for new technologies or building the capacity to perform research. I think currently we are lacking but I think in Poland, but maybe in the whole Europe, the ability to start in a quick time production of some active pharmaceutical ingredient or any other substances that might be needed in a matter of months or half a year, weeks. Hard to tell, but I think that we should go by two approaches. By one hand, preparing for what known, buying medicines, medical devices that we may need, and for the second, building readiness for unknown.
All right, but the money is not endless, unfortunately, especially now. So how do we find the right balance between, we spoke about stockpiling and investing in the innovation ecosystem, so and for medicines or medical devices that we may need down the road. How do we strike the right balance here? What do you think of all of that, Michele? Stockpiling,
So
how does that resonate?
Yeah, that of course. So we, and again, broadly as an industry, believe that stockpiling has a place. Primarily what it does is that it buys a certain amount of time. What we don't always see is clarity around what that time will be used for, and hence how effective that type of stockpiling will be or not be. The part where we place more of our attentions is around innovation, because that's not something that you can stockpile. And ultimately, that buying time is buying time so that the right approach can be developed and deployed. And so really where we put our attention is stockpiling, yes, to a degree, primarily not at too local of a level, because we know that from a supply chain perspective, that is a very fast way of triggering shortages rather than solving them. But really turning the attention to competitiveness instead, where we can know and we can be confident then when we need innovation, that innovation muscle is there, and actually that innovation muscle is here in Europe, because where innovation happens matters.
But do we need a scheme where we can accelerate innovation when needed? Is that what HERA is about? Well, you respond first, and then I'll go.
I would contend that there is a very healthy private sector that throws all of its resources to try to be as productive as possible. I am not personally looking for a centralized body doing stockpiling to help us accelerate on the innovation, but that's...
And then I'll come to you, Stine.
I think talking about stockpiling, I mean, it's a very old discussion. I mean, it's one of the elements that you need when you want to prepare for, or when you want to improve your health security preparedness level. It's only one of the things. Innovation comes with brains first, and secondly with money. So, I mean, there's a very strong pharma and chemical industry and manufacturing industry in Europe still available, and that is where investments go. I mean, big companies take their business decisions not based on what is available on the public side. I mean, there's a couple of positive examples, public-private partnerships, EMI, IHI, so on. There's a couple of things that worked and also led to the development of products, which is good. But I mean, that is also not the kind of golden solution. At the end of the day, what HERA is doing and what the public side is certainly investing into is into that kind of niche products, into kind of products which are needed to create security or to maintain security where no business model is available. No? So there's two possibilities. Either you pay for it and then you get it done, or you do it jointly, or you get it done by industry, but then again you have to pay for it. No? So at the end of the day, you need budgets for it, and you need to decide very clearly and very carefully what actually needs to be under such an MCM strategy for public security. And I mean, that was in one of the mission letters for the next commission for the
Task
commission
number
president
one,
right now.
health security
Yeah.
at the top of all these bullet points.
Yeah. So
That's
and there's
the
many
first
many
one.
other points I could say, but I think we
Yeah.
don't have time. No.
Well, I think Stine wants to come in.
No, I
and then
just
Yannick.
wanted to mention that in Commissioner Designate Hadja Labib,
Yeah.
it's in the letter
Yeah.
that this is areas that she really has to look into, and I think that's very good. And then I just wanted to say, I think probably you both have things to put into this, because if we talk about agility and innovation, I'm sure this, and I'm sure you would probably agree, that stems with the business side, because that's what they do on an everyday basis. But on the other hand, the overview, the overlooking of the situation, and to some extent stockpiling from in some special areas should remain with the institutions. That's sort of our insurance policy.
One brief comment. No, you're totally right. That is again what we are doing, what we are trying to do with the limits and the limits we are having financially in particular. But when it comes also, I mean, we're talking about finance. I mean, because the money is always left behind, not really touched on. I mean, but we are trying also to put money into small SMEs, into smaller companies that would not be able to continue the development of certain medical countermeasures. We have been doing this through Hera Invest, through the EIB. So that is, it's a small amount, but for some of these companies, we will see products coming out which serve the security of Europe. When it comes to bigger products or products which might be used in response to the AMR, whatever you call it, pandemic, that is a different topic. And here we need to talk about different models to incentivize development. There's still some big companies working on it, but there's also the pipeline of potential good products or new products is not very long, and that needs a strong investment into that to expand that pipeline. But all of this cannot be done at the end of the day only with SMEs or the public side. For that, at least for the scaling up, for the manufacturing, for the supply chains, big pharma is needed here as well. But obviously it comes with a price.
Yannick, and then questions.
Yeah, just a comment, Wolfgang. You mentioned that we have to pay for it. Of course, we have to pay for it, but it's not just a question of budget. And once again, you know, my job is for insurance products, niche products. Sometimes it's not the availability of budget which is hampering the development up to the end of a product. Sometimes it's just the regulations. For example, we have regulations for state aid because of free trade, concurrence, etc. And even for small companies like SMEs, the maximum percentage of state aid, public money, is 40-50%. Then a small SME has to self-invest. And in case they are not very sure there is a market, because the only buyer are public bodies, they won't do it. And for big companies, it's 10%. So maybe we have to address this issue and say, okay, we should have, I think, a specific set of tools to address these niche products, insurance products. Other example, for medical devices, in vitro diagnostics, the Commission said, well, now if you want a CE mark, you need to do this and that. It's 0.1 million euro. So in case, and I have examples, SME has developed such a device, a diagnostic device. I say, wow, all this money and I have no market? Well, I don't do it. So it's a big pity because public money has been spent for basic research and then it stops. And we have a lot of research. I'm happy with that. I think we don't have big problems. We have capacities in Europe for basic research. We have money, etc. But the projects, they don't go up to the end, in case they don't have a big market, of course. And we have to address this issue of the later stage of developments, clinical trials, CE marking,
The whole
marketing authorization, etc.
Yeah.
And we can see how can Europe help. Questions? Sorry, you've been patient. So we have a lot, huh? There's one here, one at the back.
Thank you. My name is Irina Kupiainen. I come from Finland IT Center for Science, a research infrastructure provider. There has been a lot of discussion now about markets, funding, tools, etc. But what about the competencies and skills for doing competitive R&D in this area? How do you see this as an issue?
All right, there is one more question. Sarah in the back.
Thank you. Laura Batchelor from FIPRA. Sort of drawing on the conversation we've had, I have a question really about the future structure of the Commission to be able to be prepared itself to kind of respond to what we've talked about. And obviously we're sitting on the eve of a new structured Commission. And I'd be interested in the panel's view on whether you have perspectives on whether that's been kind of reflected, the issues that we've been discussed are reflected in the mission letters that we've seen. Because we have a commissioner for strategic foresight, which is actually focusing actually on intergenerational fairness, but that needs to be taken into kind of ensuring a whole government approach. And that connectivity between foreign affairs and health, as you say, Stina, you know, health has been sort of forgotten, but actually that voice needs to be in the foreign affairs. You know, Kallas, Vaheli, and Labib, you know, how does that work? And maybe you, Stina, in particular, you've got that question as the Parliament to kind of like make sure that that holistic approach is taken. Yeah. Because it's a bit like One Health, you know, it's like how do we ensure that this is taken into account across the different portfolios? And is the structure going to be fit for purpose?
Okay, last chance for a last question. We've got one here.
Thanks so much. It was a fascinating discussion. Rosa Castro from DSW, we are a global health NGO. So it emerged a lot, the issue of budget and the future of budget, also in the previous panel. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts in terms, and you also mentioned it at the end, I think, on the side of incentives, including regulatory incentives. I'm curious to know if there is further thoughts about incentives at the end-to-end and also towards the final line. For instance, pool incentives that HIRA has been looked into for AMR. Are there thoughts to also look into this type of innovative financing also for other threats, like including climate change related, for instance, vector-borne diseases and others that have very unattractive markets? Thank you.
Very good. That should keep us busy for the last 13 minutes. So, who wants to go first on the competencies? Then there is, well, we'll go to one of these questions. Tina first. Yeah.
Can we do all three of them?
You can do all on Laura's question. There is actually more to it because there are like the so-called critical medicine alliance that has come up. So we want to understand, if possible, where they would be going.
No, I just wanted to say regarding the competences, an obvious question. The problem in Europe is we have the competences. We are very, very clever. We are very, very good. But the issue is that we don't transfer it into businesses. It dies. It dies with tiny ideas that are brilliant and that we need to surface and that we need to become investable. So this is really the core of what you're saying. And then I haven't even mentioned anything about the lack of people in total in the whole healthcare system. That's a nightmare. And just to your question, I think we identified 6 commissioners from the Center Committee. I mean, we're not even a full committee yet. So you know, it's spread out. That can be a nightmare, but it can also be a big advantage. And I choose to take the position that it is a big advantage, and that this means, and then we place a lot of responsibility with von der Leyen, because this really needs her to orchestrate the different commissioners. And if that's a success, it's going to be fantastic.
Wolfgang, do you know who you report to?
So
who is your commissioner?
Sorry?
In this college of commissioner?
We are working at the moment with two of them, Labib and Vaheli. I mean, that's the most obvious. And there's a couple of activities that were mentioned already on stockpiling, on MCM, on biotech, on critical medicines. So there's a couple of activities that will certainly come relatively quickly then. On the brain, on the, how do you call it? I called it brain earlier. That's what I meant actually. In many areas, Europe is still among the leading continents, but the problem starts when it gets into translational research and development. That is a discussion which is also as old as the EU is, but I think looking at or coming up now with a new commission and a strong focus on competitiveness, innovation, and the political focus in this area, hopefully we get better there. There's a number of very good examples on how to incentivize this translational research and bring also capital, not loans, capital into companies to develop products in Germany and other countries I know of. So I'm not very pessimistic, but I mean it needs a fresh push.
Michele.
Just one point on this. So we were talking about capabilities. I tend to think in terms of people. And really the conversation around competitiveness sometimes gets abstract. What that means for me when it comes to talent and competitiveness, think of a PhD student with a patent that they believe in and an idea and a hope to turn that into a medicine. Now, let's say that they are in Europe, let's say that we're lucky, and they now have to choose of whether they will decide to stay in Europe, even in a country that is well-resourced and deal with the complexities of AVDR, deal with the complexities of having to raise venture capital in 4 different languages. Or they can buy a plane ticket and go to Massachusetts or to California. It's a tall ask. Every time we ask people, no, don't choose that. Choose to stay here and deal with us, as opposed to going with your idea and actually getting something done. That is the really where the competitiveness conversation for me hits the road. And when it comes to incentives to that, going to your question, I fundamentally believe in those pull incentives because they'll get bogged into the weeds, but they rather guarantee that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Therefore, if you are good and if you can find a way, you actually can get to that light.
We didn't answer the one question on budget.
On incentives.
Would you allow that?
Sure.
No, I just think it is horrible to see that we actually have seen budgets cut for the health sector. That's not wise. So we'll have to work on bringing that back to another level.
Yeah.
We have one final question in the front, if we can have a mic. And while the mic comes to you, I think, Wolfgang, I need to ask you about this Critical Medicine Alliance and the Critical Medicine. Keep the mic, we'll take the question in a second. The Critical Medicine Act that is also in the mission letter. What can we expect from that?
I don't know what we can expect from that. I know that the Critical Medicines Alliance is working. There was a commission communication last year around the shortages and proposing a couple of activities on how to deal with that. You know, at the end of the day, what you need to have is an improvement of the situation. That means less shortages, at least of essential medicines. I mean, not all critical medicines are perhaps. Okay, I will not comment on that. So now this Critical Medicines Alliance is working. They have a couple of groups working on supply chains, dissection of reasons, and trying to find recommendations on what to do to reverse that situation. No? So there's another group working on international relations to see on how to diversify supply chains. That is also potentially a way to go. So I would say the Critical Medicines Act that should come relatively quickly. I think it was mentioned in the mission letter that this would be one of the first things to come out on the health side. That recommendations from the Critical Medicines Alliance would certainly feed into, and we are running at the moment also a report, or we are developing a report with potential policy options to take forward. So that feeds into that. What it actually looks like at the end, I have no idea.
But do you feel already in the discussions taking place within the alliance and the groups and the subgroups, do you hear some of the topics that were discussed today, either regarding procurement or alignment of countries and so on and so forth?
Of course. I mean, it's the whole compendium that one could imagine. It goes from procurement to the section of supply chains to financial incentives to analyzing root causes of shortages, dependencies, autonomy, managing dependencies, ways to create autonomies if needed, and so on and so forth. So it's the whole compendium, basically.
Okay, a space to watch. Yannick?
Yeah, a short comment. There was a question about specific structure in the EU. So I think HERA is a good example of what the Commission does well. So it's quite new, 2 years or 3 years now. So it has to develop. And you mentioned the BARDA in the US. And if the Commission could achieve this power, it would be very interesting, because it's also linked with the problems of the skills and people, brilliant people escaping to the States and not wanting to stay here. And once again, for niche products, if they go to the States, maybe the company who will hire them will get a large budget from the BARDA, even if the product does not still have a marketing authorization, but tens of millions of dollars is enough. But currently we cannot do this in Europe, because maybe HERA is not big enough now, it may change in the future. And also we have these regulations. If it's a purchase, a procurement, we have to follow, of course, public market rules. And in the States, they have something called the Buy American Act. So public bodies wanting to stockpile, for example, medicines, they have to buy American.
Yeah.
Is it the same in Europe? I'm not sure.
Okay, another thing to look at. We take a very short question because we have only a few minutes left.
I'd like to put a question on that. I'd like a few minutes to tell the story and what we are doing in Bulgaria. I'm from Bulgaria, and I'm a former Navy officer. And when the war started, if you remember, on the 24th of February, first Russian troops went to Chernobyl. Then they escaped. Now, at this moment, a few countries started to buy Kali Fudites to give to the citizens, afraid that Zaporozhye and some other nuclear power plant could suffer. But generally, if you look what is the situation now, in European Union, nobody is thinking and preparing such a kind of kits for European citizens, where somebody could take these kits if something happened. And I'll tell a story. From these 15,000 people who suffer from Chernobyl in Bulgaria, I was one of them with a heavy cancer, and I went to the United States to be treated, but a lot of people have no this kind of chance to treat it, and they pass away. And before to give you a question again, we developed 2 very interesting products. Rambok radiation metal body cleaner and Hambok heavy metal body cleaner. Analyzing, together with the Naval Academy, with the military hospital of Bulgaria, analyzing what will happen if we have a heavy story. We analyze in the United States, there is such a kind of emergency kit, and people are having this kind of kit. If something happens, they took this kind of kit. I will tell you, 1.5 years, it took us for develop, close to 2 years. European bureaucracy is stopping any normal way to work. And here is a question. Is any chance European Parliament to put on the table the following? If you work in plasma industry, in plastic, you pay some taxes.
Okay.
What kind of taxes are paying military companies who became enormously rich for destroying environment, destroying health of the people, and in the same moment, how such a kind of new products, how we develop, because we develop this kind of kits, and have it could be stimulated for the European Union, make some form of prediction, and tell you what will happen if we are going, what is going in Ukraine, but what is happened if
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
I'll have to stop
Fukushima.
you here because
Thank-
we've got 1 minute to go. So, but yeah, you're raising important points. There is no military company here on the panel, so we won't be able to address that part. But I actually wanted to finish up, and Lukasz, I'll turn to you. I don't know if you can answer the gentleman's question, but that's on the nuclear threats as well. So that's one thing that we started off also with the niche product. But I wanted to take the final minute to talk about the Polish presidency, because you're next in line. So is there anything in the Polish presidency that we should watch? And if one of you wants to provide a quick answer, you can.
So I will be quick as possible. Polish presidency will be first from our topic of discussion will be pharmaceutical law, changes in pharmaceutical law. Mental health, sorry, forgot the word.
Brain?
No, brain, sorry. That you prevention of the civilization diseases and of course cancer treatment. We also to plan to of course strengthen the innovative aspects of the R&D in health. So that to be quick, and I think that's all that are the plans of for Poland for the presidency.
Good to know. Thank you. We'll watch the space. Tina?
No, I just wanted to come back to you and say I think you raise a very, very important point, because there is a big area of civil protection, which is somewhere in between all the situations that we've talked about and war. And we need to understand that much better. It is also in some of the letters to the commissioners to be, and I will definitely take it with me back. And I do feel a big concern about do we look into this enough?
Very good. Michele, do you have a word at the end or no?
I think it's been a wonderful conversation. The thought that I would like everyone to walk away with and remember is, when it comes to health and when it comes to health security, what are we doing collectively so that the next PhD with an idea wants to stay here? So, thank you.
Okay, something to think about. Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lunch is waiting outside, so we will resume in 1 hour, 2 o'clock.